Hi, I'm Monika Bognar. I am a client manager here at Culture Counts. Thank you so much for joining us for this next episode in our Social Connections series. Today, we're chatting about how arts companies are pivoting their programming online to online delivery. How has that experience been for them and for their audiences? So, I'd like to introduce my guest, Rosemarie Milsom, the director of the Newcastle Writers Festival. Rosemarie, welcome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Monica. Nice to see you.
Yes, nice to see you too. So, Rosemarie is the founding director of the Newcastle Writers Festival. She is passionate about storytelling and created the festival to provide a platform for Hunter region writers to share their work and enable local audiences to engage with leading Australian writers. So, thanks so much for joining us today, Rosemarie. It's really great to have you. Let's just jump straight in. So, could you just give us a brief background on the Newcastle Writers Festival and what you had planned for 2020's event?
Well, we were heading into our eighth festival, so pretty exciting. 160 writers, 90 events planned for the first weekend in April. That tends to be our traditional weekend. Can change if Easter gets in the way, and so we slightly shift around, but usually first weekend in April. And writers from all around Australia, and a combination of emerging, established, and poets, historians, fiction writers, journalists as well. So very kind of broad church in terms of literature. And we kind of collaborate with a lot of organisations as well locally. So there was going to be a concert with Newcastle Youth Orchestra for kids, and based on Dr. Seuss, Green Eggs and Ham. So we it's very multifaceted. And I was really excited. Ticket sales were looking incredibly strong, up about 15% on last year, which was
Wow.
great. And we had our program launch towards about 22nd of February. Christos Tsiolkas, the Australian writer, brilliant Australian writer, came to town for our program launch, and he couldn't come to the main festival in April. He was going to be in Europe. So we had that event, and we kind of rolled in the program launch as well. We'd never done that before, so even that was different, having the sort of launch of the program and then going straight into an hour-long conversation with Christos. So there was a real buzz that night. And if you told me that night that 3 weeks later we'd be cancelling the event, I kind of would have thought you were crazy. COVID had not really been mentioned at all at that point. It was a vague kind of news story, something about China. That's about it. And there was no sort of sense that we would be having to deal with it 3 weeks later in the way that we did.
Once you had found out that you needed to cancel the sort of in-person event that you had planned, can you tell us a little bit about why you decided to do an online program?
It was mainly because of other people, to be honest. We announced cancellation on Friday the 13th of March. It was a bit of a turning point, I think, for a lot of events. The chief medical officer had advised the government to limit events to 500, but it hadn't been adopted. That wasn't till Prime Minister spoke on the Sunday night. This was Friday. So we'd had a board meeting that week and talked about, it was so interesting. So on the Tuesday we had a board meeting, and between Tuesday and Friday we kind of formulated some tipping points. So if these things happen, we would cancel. And that's what happened on the Friday. That couple of things happened. It triggered it. And I was devastated. I mean, I was absolutely, I can't explain it. It was such a surreal thing to have an event 3 weeks out. All the momentum's there. You've got flights booked, hotels booked. You've got a real buzz around it, social media campaign. And then to just suddenly stop it. We had a board meeting on the Saturday, so we cancelled Friday, board meeting Saturday, an emergency board meeting. And I was not well either. I had a sinus infection. I was pretty emotional, and a few people had said when we cancelled, "Oh, look at doing something online." And I thought, "Are you crazy? Can you give me a moment here? I just couldn't get my head around that whole concept. It was too much to take in. It was pretty overwhelming anyway. to be cancelling a major event. So, and I wanted to get better. I wasn't very well at all. And I remember our creative agency, amazing, one of a key sponsor of ours, Enigma, a couple of their kind of go-getting sort of, creatives said to me, rang me, said, we can help in any way. Let's look at going online. And again, like I didn't even pick up a couple of the phone calls because the phone was ringing nonstop that evening. And I just felt like I couldn't quite deal with it. I was overwhelmed. Then a couple of days later, I went to my GP, got antibiotics, started to feel a bit better. And I thought to myself, why am I so upset? What's the most upsetting thing about this? And it is that those artists weren't going to have a platform. That a lot of time and effort had been invested in that program, 90 events, and it was all going to waste. And then I just thought, you know what? Maybe there's some value in not wasting it. Can we do something so it isn't a waste? And that's when my thinking clicked. And it wasn't really anyone else talking to me. It wasn't anyone else bombarding me with go online, go online. It was me just coming to that realization that I should give it a go. So this was sort of by the end of the first week post-festival, post-cancellation. The festival was then due to happen 2 weeks after that. So I had a meeting with our creative agency on the Thursday of that first week post-cancellation. So I kind of lost 4 or 5 days just feeling sorry for myself and not being well. And I walked away from that meeting thinking, okay, I can do this. But I still didn't really know what shape it would take. I didn't know who would be involved. And I think it's really hard, these few months down the track to contemplate the fact that when I started talking to people, I would say about 80 to 90% had never used Zoom or had never used they just hadn't used it. There'd been I'd used it for some meetings. You and I had chatted. We'd used it for meetings. But that's kind of different to looking at recording a session that you would ordinarily do with a live audience in a venue, and switch that to a whole different structure to get your head around the technology. So then I suddenly realized that, okay, it wasn't just going to be a matter of going online, but how am I going to get this online? And who can I take along for the ride? Because we were one of the first. Someone tweeted that we were the first literary festival to go online ever in the world. Now, I don't know about that. I'm sure, but I looked and I was thinking, that's like a music festival going online. Why would you? If you can have the real event, that's why you have the real event, because that's why people come to festivals, that interaction. So I think it's probably right, actually. I really do think that we are the first one in the world. And I know that sounds really weird. How could you? You're from Newcastle, you just, whatever. But I thought about it long and hard, and I did a bit of research, and I couldn't find another one. And we were the first anywhere, COVID. So even if you forget the fact it's never happened previously, but definitely impacted by COVID, we were the first in the world to pivot online. So then I started to feel like, well, we needed to do it to kind of enable other organisations. We could be the guinea pig in a way. And so I got excited then. It was the same kind of excitement that I felt in a way about getting the first festival off the ground. When you do something for the first time, you can't see it. Like, you actually can't see it. You have to take a leap of faith, and you have to put all the kind of, organisation in place. But I didn't know that weekend how it would turn out. And it surpassed anything I'd anticipated. It was a really positive experience.
Oh, that's so wonderful to hear. So I guess you've kind of touched on a couple of things that we were sort of going to talk about already, but, how did you finding that process of shifting online to the online delivery? You mentioned you sort of needed, assistance in doing that and figuring out the how. So you had the why, just sort of trying to figure out the how to make that happen. How did you sort of find that process, and what was that experience of delivering online versus what you're used to in the past? You just compared it to the first festival. How do you sort of compare the delivery of the two types of festivals?
Completely different, utterly different. I mean, if you haven't been to a writers' festival before, I suppose compare it to seeing anything live. I mean, any kind of event, any talking event, a seminar, anything like that. It's not, or a concert. I mean, it's that interaction of the audience with that dynamic on stage. There is a real energy around it. And I remember thinking, oh gosh, how is this going to work? It's not going to have that. It's not going to have that audience, that tension. That's quite a positive thing. So I sort of let that go. I thought, well, no, it doesn't have to be that. You're not replicating a writers' festival. You're just not. You're presenting elements of the program online so that, everyone can engage with it. There are a couple of decisions that were made. Now, listen, like taking into account weeks later, yes, I would do things differently technically. Everyone's now doing amazing live, this and that. But you've kind of got to cast your mind back. And what it highlighted to me was I kind of know this personally. I'm the most non-techie person you could ever meet. I'm not joking. I'm not just saying that to be kind of like, a humble brag. I really don't. I just struggle. And so I couldn't believe that no one else could really help either. Like I didn't, even our creative agency made a couple of suggestions, but I just kind of wished we'd had the resources and time. So you've got to understand, by the time I met with the creative agency that Thursday, we went, it was 2 weekends later, done. So I had to actually get everyone involved. I had to coordinate the program. I had to create a whole new mini program because I couldn't get everyone I wanted for various reasons. One of the main ones particularly were the session hosts, so the facilitators, much like your job today, who just said, oh gosh, well, when you cancelled, I stopped preparing. I stopped reading the books and I'm homeschooling and I'm, this and that, and I'm working from home. I just don't have the capacity to now get moving again. So I kind of had a target of certain sessions I wanted. Didn't mean I was going to get them. And that was okay. I just went, okay, you know what? It'll be what it'll be, as long as I have a few key things which I think represent us as an event, which is diversity. I wanted, men and women, cultural diversity, diversity among writers, so emerging writers, so not just the big name writers. I wanted to give them local writers a chance. So I had some Newcastle writers in the mix and ended up with 17 events from 90, which, I think is pretty good in just over 2 weeks. So again, I cut myself some slack and I did it all with myself and with, this will kind of be pretty crazy as well, but just couple of months prior to the festival, I put on a contractor to help with social media leading up to the festival, because I tend to do that myself, and I don't do a very good job because I'm overwhelmed with everything else. And I'd met Zoe at Newcastle University last year. She was a student, and cut a long story short, they used the festival as a project to build a PR campaign around. I was really taken with her strength in social media. So I reached out to her lecturer, gave my details and said, look, could you pass them on to Zoe? I'd be interested in talking to her. We'd had a couple of meetings. She'd come on board. She was doing a fantastic job. And I essentially said to her, I need your help. And so Zoe and I did it together in 2 weeks, from beginning to end. And she helped with the social media, the technical side. So a few things that were important. We already had a YouTube channel. We didn't have 100 subscribers. You know how after 100 subscribers, you can get your own personalised URL. So I got on Facebook and said to friends, could you go and subscribe? So that got sorted. We got our own personalised URL. We already had a Give Now. Very early on, I thought this would be a way of raising some money. So we already had a Give Now page. That was all set up already. So there were things that were already in place that made it a lot easier. And then the big decision I made to take on board everyone's lack of experience with this. I didn't want to put them under any extra pressure. We pre-recorded. So I know that that's very different to a festival in a normal setting. And now I'd be more confident to do things live. Like, we're going to do an event in July and it will be live. And even I've had to find my confidence with that because of the technology. It's a big risk. Everyone had different technological kind of connections. So I've got really good. I've got the NBN right to the node to the house. Like, it's pretty amazing. but that's not, some of our facilitators live in rural New South Wales so I felt that it gave us the best chance to at least provide quality in subcapacity. And I just felt like I couldn't cope with it on the day of disappointing people if a technical glitch made it impossible to hear Charlotte Wood, for example, speaking about her brilliant book. So I made that decision, and it meant that you couldn't have that immediate interaction. So, for example, yes, you couldn't have on Facebook Live as the, you know, well, we kind of could. I mean, with some of the presenters, I said, look, if you're comfortable, get onto YouTube. There's the chat box, and let people know you're there and you're happy to answer questions. That didn't really take off. I know that if we'd gone live with Facebook Live, there would be probably have been a lot more engagement in that sense. But look, these were the decisions that I made kind of at the time, and I wrote an idiot's guide to Zoom. You know, it was so ironic. I thought, gosh, it's the blind leading the blind. But
So good.
even how to record
Yeah.
the session, like just a whole lot of different things. And then the wonderful Zoe quickly kind of edited the beginning and the ends, and she added an animation that Enigma did, our creative agency, that, you know, had a donation message at the end, and she uploaded everything, and we used Premiere. So she uploaded everything to YouTube and Facebook for me. I wouldn't have, you know, if someone had taught me through it, I probably could have ended up doing that. But I was busy organising the talent and scheduling the sessions, receiving those via Dropbox or whatever. And I have to say, the first session that arrived in my inbox, it was so surreal to have a session like just lob into my inbox when normally I'd be at the festival running around frantically. I never get to see anything. That weekend, everything went live because we allocated time slots. We followed the program, and we didn't just put everything all up at once. We did actually follow the schedule, and we called it Stories to You. So NWF Stories to You. I came up with that idea. I wanted it to be rebranded in a way because it was different. And we were bringing stories to you. So Enigma were great. We recorded a little video where I outlined what we were doing. But I remember recording that, and I was still a bit shell-shocked. I still at that point only had 2 or 3 writers locked in.
Yeah.
I was thinking, I don't even know. Anyway, so I don't know. It was stressful but exciting, and that's kind of what every festival's like. And it definitely the very first festival was like. It's an unknown.
It's nice that you have that kind of the way that you're thinking about the online version of the festival, even because it is new, and you had, you know, the new branding, the new name, and that sort of thing, and it did have that kind of feel that first festival had as well, but different. They're very different sort of programs. That's a really great overview of how it all sort of came together, and the kind of experiences and benefits and sort of snags you hit as well. So we might move on to the next section, which is just about talk a little bit about the evaluation that we did of the program, and then just a bit about sort of future applications of what you learnt, I guess, through the online experience.
Yeah, well, obviously you contacted me. I hadn't even thought about it because we were going to do some evaluation of the main festival, you know.
Yes.
And it was going to be quite pivotal because we're looking to do a new strategic plan, and I was really looking forward to doing this quite comprehensive evaluation. And I wouldn't have thought of even doing an evaluation of because I kind of, again, you know, I was so focused on what I was trying to do. And then I thought it would be really valuable to just get some feedback to find out, because it was new for everybody.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just new for me. It was new for our audience. We've got a very loyal audience, but we got people engaging from around the world. We got people, social media went crazy. It was so exciting on the Saturday because it was so new that, you know, photos on Instagram of people sitting down with their lunch, with a session on their laptop, you know, in front, and someone in the Northern Territory in their backyard watching it on a laptop. I found that just extraordinary, to be honest.
Sorry, I was just going to say just a bit of background about that evaluation that we put together. We'd already planned that for the 2020 festival based on, you know, the program and all the things that we discussed and things like that. And then we really adapted that public survey to give you those insights into the outcomes and the things like that that you really needed to know and were looking to know as part of that strategic plan work, but then also adding in the questions around where people were coming from so that we could get some, you know, interesting insights about who was tuning in to this sort of first online festival. And when you say that, it's actually one of my little notes that I've got here, you know, 37% of respondents were actually from outside Newcastle, and that includes, you know, WA, Victoria, Sydney and overseas, and 20% of respondents had never attended the festival before. So it was the first time they were engaging. So were you expecting that kind of reach, that kind of with the online program?
No, I wasn't. And it is really interesting because then you start, well, two things that have come out of it that I've reflected on: the incredible reach you can have by being online, and also your accessibility. So it means that people who can't get into Newcastle physically for our event, and I'm very conscious of this, and we have always put, we record a lot of sessions, so we have SoundCloud, and we've always put up, you know, probably about 20 sessions or so from each festival, and we've just reiterated that to people now while they're in isolation, that there's about 60 sessions already that we have from previous festivals that they can listen to. But I'm very conscious about accessibility. And suddenly I felt like, wow, yes, it doesn't matter if you for whatever reason that is, disability, transport, money, you know, you can't get into Newcastle for our event, you can get a sample of it. We did make it free. So this is another interesting aspect. You know, a few people have said to me, gosh, with that engagement, what a shame we you know, didn't charge $5 per person. Yeah, of course. We've had $100,000 in the bank. Would have been pretty amazing. But I also felt very strongly that from when the festival was cancelled, very, very early on, we thought, this will be a donation drive. And then suddenly things shut. Each week, you know, we'd get the Sunday press conference from the Prime Minister, and jobs were being lost. And I just felt in all conscience that we couldn't do it. We also had a couple of key funders that had supported us, and Create New South Wales being one of them. And they had said, look, we don't expect the money back. We funded you, and there are a couple of other, your copyright agency, look, it's fine. We expect that you'll have to redirect those funds. And obviously we'd already spent quite a lot on flights and, you know, you name it. So I felt like we had an obligation. We had an obligation to our artists as well. So, you know, it's a different way of thinking possibly to other people, but they're all the things that were going on in my mind. Look, I didn't know who would engage. I honestly didn't. How do you know? How can you know that?
Well, I guess,
something, you know.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
I was going to say, when something's not been done before, you can't really, it's exciting in that you can't compare it to anything. So I like that. It feels quite liberating.
I mean, it will be really interesting to see the engagement next year if we do like an evaluation again, and how you sort of choose to do your programming next year as well. But just before we get onto that, just one thing about some of the outcomes that respondents, how they engage with the program. So some really interesting stats that you had was sort of 94% of respondents agreed that they felt welcome and included as part of the program, and 88% agreed that the program helped them to feel connected to people 88% of respondents agreed that the program helped them feel connected to people in the community. So those are really fantastic results for this kind of program that you'd pulled together from, you know, your previous program, but those were still the outcomes that you were really looking to the impact you were looking to have on your audiences. So it's really great that online program still had that same impact on them.
Yeah, and I mean, I think now things have, you know, in a couple of months down the track, we're probably all reached peak online content. Like, I feel I'm pulling back more and more. We've always had online content, and clearly it's not new, but, you know, being human, we want to engage person to person. That's just the way it is in real time at destinations, at venues. So I think I'm feeling there's a bit of fatigue now. And it's interesting that Writers' Festival's coming afterwards. Sydney Writers' Festival cancelled a couple of days after us. They were in May. They've decided to do a series of podcasts, amazing podcasts, utilising some of the guests that would have been here. And Byron Writers Festival in August is also doing podcasts. So I think the feeling was doing video, it's like we're all maybe a bit over sitting in the notion of sitting and watching for 45 minutes now that conditions have eased and we can get out and about. But when we had our festival, which was the 4th and 5th of April, we were all in that preliminary stage of isolation. We were all going, what are we doing? What do we do with ourselves? And I think the timing for us was extraordinary. We were just at the beginning and people were kind of a bit lost. And so I feel that sense of connection and that sense of community, we really did meet that need. I don't know if we'd meet that need now, 2 months later. I don't know if it would be as strong. We definitely have done our best and do our best to do that. But I feel like it all came down to the timing. I feel there are a few factors at play.
That's so interesting, having that context around that, the timing as being so crucial. And yeah, you're right. Now that people are sort of being able to get, out and about, they can actually listen to a podcast while they go for their walk. They can do all those things. So that's actually quite,
well, we had 5 people over for dinner on Saturday night.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and that felt really kind of...
It's weird, isn't it?
I was exhausted, actually. It was kind of interesting. Everyone was gone by 10 o'clock because it was kind of so much stimulation.
Yeah, it's too much. Yeah.
Yeah,
I totally agree.
So I think what we did serves as almost, I can see it as an artefact, actually, in some senses.
I think that's really interesting. And I guess we can sort of, just one final kind of point, I guess, or question that I've got for you, kind of how do you think you'll apply the things that you learnt from delivering the online version of the festival to sort of future festivals? So whether you've already kind of mentioned that potentially, I mean, you're already doing online versions of recordings and things like that. Do you think in future festivals, this will always form part of what you do now in conjunction with an in-person event, or?
I don't know. It's the million-dollar question, isn't it? What events are going to look like next year? I mean, we've moved to May from April. That was on the cards anyway. We'd already announced that in the program for this year. That's mainly because of increased heat. It's getting quite hot in early April. I feel like writers' festivals tend to be kind of indoor events, and have 33 degrees in early April. Just makes it difficult. Makes it difficult for people rushing around. Makes it difficult. I don't know. We're moving into mid-May. So it gives us coincidentally a little bit more time now, even that extra sort of few weeks. I don't know how it's going to look. I'm confident if we went online, the technical side would be we could be far more advanced. One thing that's opened up to me, because it's always been out of our reach, is international writers. Because we could never afford to pay for writers' business class airfare from the UK or America. And moving into May was to be closer to Sydney, I hoped would enable us to share maybe a couple of internationals, etc. So we could possibly, I think people would be much more comfortable with us if we had international writers in the program via video. So even in the venue, but via, hookup. We have the facilitator in venue, but the writer on screen. I think that's felt a little bit like cheating in the past, like you're not offering people the full experience if that's the case. I don't think that'll be the feeling now, because we are used to seeing more people on screen. So I feel like that could open up the possibility of some international writers for us, which would be incredible. As I said, we don't have the budget to bring internationals here. So that's one positive. I'm concerned about, the impact social distancing will have, even on our volunteers. So we have 160 volunteers, and, we have a room for them, and you hustle and bustle and you do briefings, and, we have to have a really large space to accommodate our volunteers. What about a change of shift with social distancing? I don't even know how so there's a few logistical things that are concerning me. And what about people's appetite to be in a live setting? Our audience is traditionally older, majority of our audience, 45, 50 plus. And I think that we have to be very aware of the risk factors. But we're talking about, over a year away. So I would hope that we're through the worst of this. And I think Australia's gone amazingly well. I can only see that it'll just go up and up from here in
Mm.
terms of overcoming the impact of this pandemic. So I think that the measures that are in place will remain permanently now. Hand sanitizer, cleaning, we'll do all of that as a matter of course for every future festival we ever do. That will not slip by us. Do we have a seat spare between people in rooms? Do we do some outdoor events? Do we do something in the park? Have a big outdoor event? Do we move the Newcastle Youth Orchestra outdoors instead of indoors? I don't know. They're things that I think that they're open for discussion, and I'm kind of using the next few months to just I'm trying not to worry. I'm trying not to try to picture it. We don't have all the information. So even if I picture this event, it could all shift so dramatically. We all know things are changing so rapidly. Look what's happened in the past couple of weeks now. And June 1, everything's going to shift again. July, August, September. I think as the months roll on, freedom's going to become, more and more pertinent. We'll be able to move about more freely.
Definitely.
So I'm not sure, but I think I'd be confident to possibly have a bit of a hybrid, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to tell now. I mean, as you said, everything's changing so quickly. I mean, we don't even know what this time next year will really look like. Well, I think that's probably it for today. Did you have any other sort of final reflections on your experience or anything like that? Otherwise, we might wrap it up.
No, not really. Just that, I just value everyone's support for it. I value the writers who jumped on board, many of whom, again, have never used Zoom. The facilitators, some of whom initially said, oh, I don't think I can do this, and then got back to me and said, oh, but help me do it, and I really want to support you. And even one facilitator contacted her writer, and they did a dummy run-through. They did a dummy interview, and she sent it to me for feedback and said, tell me if I need to be doing. I mean, that shows incredible commitment. And I feel like we all felt like we were, I don't know, a brave new world kind of thing. We were charging ahead with something new. I know it sounds really strange to say that when people are Zooming meetings constantly in the business sector or whatever, but we've got to talk about a writers' festival, and we're all very analog, kind of, majority of us are very analog. We just do things person to person, and that's definitely the core of a writers' festival. So it was a challenge on multiple fronts, and I don't underestimate that. And I feel so appreciative of everyone who jumped on board, because there wouldn't have been an online program. I couldn't have done it on my own in terms of pulling that content together. And I feel like we made the best of a really bad situation, and I'm really proud of that.
Oh, well, it's a lovely sentiment to leave it on there. Thank you so much, Rosemarie, for your time.
Thanks, Monika.
Thank you so much for watching. If you want to find out more about our arts resources, you can head to our website at culturecounts.cc, or you can email us at hello@culturecounts.cc. And thank you, and we'll see you next time.